Time drags its feet, feels like forever. But the longer the wait, the sweeter the kiss. All I really know is we're stronger together. If that isn't love, then I don't know what is. No, you can't say how you're really feeling. What goes unsaid is what I'm feeling too. So here we are living life through a letter. There's nothing I love more than home thoughts from abroad.
Dad, are you off to the war tomorrow?
I am. Look after Mummy. If she gets upset, give her a hug.
I'm Kate Barclay, Colonel Barclay's wife. We need to come up with some exciting activities while our service people are away.
What about singing?
Singing?
Let's just get the strippers in.
Oh, yes. Lisa, I need help to bring them together. So
Why don't we...
Sorry. Go ahead.
No.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Lisa. That's lovely.
This reminds me of when my parents got divorced.
La 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 la.
That was like the incantations of a bunch of witches.
Bit dramatic.
If you think singing is what the women need, then you're more out of touch than I thought.
Tell me.
We've lost contact with them.
I just feel sick every time the phone rings, every time the doorbell goes. How do you cope?
You may not need the choir, Lisa, but those women do.
Lying in my bed, I hear the clock tick and think of you. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time.
The top brass need you to sing at the Festival of Remembrance.
It's on TV. The big one.
We need to be organised, something we both know is not your strong point.
Do you know what? All you do is belittle me, but I am trying.
This is going to be a disaster.
Guys, please don't give up. I know we can do this.
If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time. If you fall, I will catch you, I'll be waiting. Time after time. If you're lost, you can look and
Great music, it doesn't happen when things are perfect.
time after time.
It happens when you care.
Fall, I will catch you, I'll be waiting.
This choir isn't about singing for ourselves. It's about it being heard. Behold our choir, dignified, noble, full class.
Hello there. Richard the Film Geek here. And I'm here on active service to give you guys my review of the 2019 British dramedy Military Wives, which had two female writers, Roseanne Flynn and Rachel Tunnard, was directed by Peter Cattaneo, who not only directed several episodes of The Bill and The A Word, but also previously gave us The Full Monty nearly 30 years ago, and stars Kristen Scott Thomas, Sharon Horgan, Jason Fleming, Greg Wise, Gabby French, and Amy James Kelly, aka Maddie Heath from Coronation Street. The story of Military Wives, which almost serves as a spiritual sequel, in a way, to The Full Monty, is based on the true life story of how the very first Military Wives Choir started a global movement that led to the formation of a network consisting of 75 choirs in British military bases across the UK and overseas, by famously performing at the 2011 Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall, as most famously documented, of course, by the 4th series of the BBC Two Gareth Malone-fronted musical reality documentary series, The Choir. And we particularly follow two completely different women, namely the uptight, stuffy, practical and socially conservative Kate, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, and the much more laid back, yet at the same time pessimistic party girl Lisa, played by Sharon Horgan, who constantly politely bicker and clash over their differing methods of leading a choir that they've decided to form alongside fellow spouses and or partners in order to distract themselves from worrying over their loved ones who are away on active duty in Afghanistan. Once the choir eventually starts to find their harmony and rhythm, and then receive the aforementioned life-changing invitation to the Albert Hall, the question remains, will the choir themselves, and especially Kate and Lisa, get their act together in time? So now that I've recently seen this movie for the first time, here are my thoughts on Military Wives. While I wouldn't exactly say that this is quite as impactful as something like Billy Elliot, Made in Dagenham, Fisherman's Friends, The King's Speech, or even The Full Monty, just to name a select few, I actually kind of legit really like this movie. Military Wives is indeed a surprisingly good, charming, heartfelt, delightful, and above all, lovely crowd pleaser of a film that is superbly directed by Peter Cattaneo, very cleverly and intelligently written by Rachel Tunnard and Roseanne Flynn, wears its heart proudly on its sleeve, and manages to maintain this near-perfect balance of kitchen sink grit and urbane realism with a hopeful optimism and earthy humour about it. Plus, there are a few moments during the film, including a certain funeral scene during the second half, that may probably leave you with more than one lump in your throat and or more than one tear in your eye, and will also very much resonate and strike a very richly poignant emotional chord with other women who may find themselves going through a similar common situation to the characters in this film, particularly in terms of the extreme stresses, worries, anxieties, pressure, and especially emotional pain of losing and or having lost a loved one in armed combat. The acting from everyone involved is genuinely really good. from the two leads all the way down to the supporting performances, with only 4 in my book being true standouts in this movie. Starting off with the first 2 standouts here being, of course, our leads, Kristen Scott Thomas and Sharon Horgan as Kate and Lisa. These two, both together and individually in this movie, are just brilliant and indelibly entertaining to watch on screen. They easily provide some of the best, most humorous and heartfelt moments in this movie. They work off of one another and complement each other perfectly, with Horgan very much excelling in the much more comedic moments, and Scott Thomas likewise very much excelling in the much more dramatic moments. Plus the polite banter between them, and particularly their arguments over how best to approach leading this choir, is hilarious and is almost like watching an old married couple, or at least in a way, almost like a more polite gender reversal of Woody and Buzz's dynamic from the first Toy Story. Plus, one couldn't help but be very much reminded of the iconic pink versus blue scene from Sleeping Beauty, where Flora and Merryweather are arguing over the colour of Aurora's dress. In fact, just imagine a whole movie consisting of just that one scene, and that's pretty much the basic gist of what you get here. It also particularly greatly helps that both of these women go through slightly different, but at the same time, similar arcs. Namely, Lisa struggling to come to terms with how to properly raise her wayward teenage daughter, and Kate herself especially struggling to keep it together, struggling to keep her composure in front of everyone, whilst at the same time silently and privately grieving the loss of her son. Plus, you can probably clearly tell that these two women really enjoyed the golden opportunity to work off of one another behind the scenes, as well as really how much fun they had with their roles. I mean, honestly, if these two weren't in this movie probably would have lost a lot more of its gravity than it thankfully does. The third standout performance of this movie that I want to touch on briefly is Amy James Kelly as Sarah, who is probably really the only supporting character of the bunch to be fully fleshed out and developed as her own character, has to go on an emotional journey of her own, and thus provides the movie's beating heart. And the final standout performance and really unsung hero of this movie, at least in my book, that I'm honestly kind of shocked that nobody is talking about or praising enough, is classically trained Welsh theatre actress Gabby French as Jess. Granted, she isn't much of a character in this movie, but very much similarly, for example, to Sophie McShearer as Daisy in Downton Abbey, she still managed to catch my attention just by how sincerely sweet and adorable she was, and how much I personally found myself rooting for her character to overcome her shyness and succeed. Plus, her gorgeous singing voice is off the charts amazing. And the brief little scene towards the end where she is found meditating under the table as opposed to fainting is just brilliant and literally had me laughing. Even Jason Fleming and Greg Wise are very good in their respective bit roles as Crooks and Colonel Richard, Kate's husband. Plus, let's just say that this movie has a much better use of the classic Sister Sledge song, "We Are Family," over the end credits than Ice Age Continental Drift did. Just putting it out there. However, for all the overall praise I'm giving this movie, I do of course acknowledge and agree that it isn't perfect, and I can only really think of only 3 slight issues I have with it that just about hold it back from being a true masterpiece for me. The first issue I have is with the story. Not necessarily that it is bad or anything per se, but it is rather kind of on the safe, formulaic and predictable side of things. Like, you've probably already seen this type of hopeful, optimistic, feel-good underdog story dozens of times before at this point, that there is no real stakes, no real tension, and no real surprises. And the things that do happen in the movie, you'd probably already see coming from a mile away anyway. The second issue I have with this film is not necessarily to do with how everyone performs the supporting characters. They're perfectly fine, but rather with how they're written. I mean, with the obvious exceptions of Sarah and maybe perhaps Jess, they're just not really given the proper chance themselves to stand out as distinctive individual personalities within this choir, and or even to properly develop as anything more than relatively harmless and inoffensive character types. And the third and final issue I have with this movie is really chiefly the pacing. Not exactly that it makes the movie boring in any way per se, but rather the honest fact that you could have easily told this story in just a simple hour and a half. You absolutely didn't need to stretch it out to 2 hours. Plus, you could have done with maybe tightening it a bit better by perhaps cutting and or trimming a couple of scenes that weren't really necessary and or didn't really need to be there. In conclusion, even despite its few slight imperfections holding it back from being a true masterpiece, and while it perhaps definitely isn't quite as colourful or even memorable as The Full Monty in terms of Peter Cattanio's filmography at least, Military Wives still hits all the near perfect notes it needed to hit. It will most definitely make you laugh and cry in equal measure. And it will ultimately leave you feeling like you're all snuggled up by the fire with a cup of hot chocolate in hand. If you're into feel-good movies or true stories, and or just really want to be pleasantly entertained with a heartwarming smile on your face for 2 hours, then I would definitely highly recommend that you go and check this movie out. And with all that being said, my overall rating for Military Wives is going to be a strong 8 out of 10.
10 o'clock tonight, I'll be looking at the moon. That's 1:30 for you. Will you be up then too? And know that it's shining on me.
Now, don't forget to do the following few things as always. Leave a comment below, let me know your thoughts on Military Wives, subscribe to my channel, click on the little bell to receive any emailed notifications and or updates from the channel. If you haven't already, you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd and Blue Sky. Do take care everyone, and goodbye.
When it's only a game, and I need you. Listen to the words that you say.
Go on, Jess. Hey.
50 quid a ticket, mate.
Of course the Welsh girl can bloody sing.